I had Carlos Mencia on my show recently.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see him on stage recently where he mooned the audience?
No.
Showed his whole ass
Was
on
it a
stage.
playful moment or?
So he was at Bart Reed's comic strip in El Paso, Texas.
Mm.
You ever played there?
I think I may have.
So there was a rude couple in the front row. They were being obnoxious. He got into an argument with them. And at one point, he turned around and just pulled down his pants.
Yeah.
Showed his whole ass.
Uh-huh.
It was all caught on video as well.
Right.
Would you do something like this?
No, I wouldn't go there. I wouldn't go there. My words are my weapons.
Yeah?
So the moment I start pulling my dick out and showing my ass, it might be time for me to take a break. Listen, man, Joe Rogan single-handedly dismantled that man's career.
Although he's doing better now. He's got
listen.
a Vegas residency now.
Listen,
Still making money.
when I used to perform at, or when I, anytime I perform at Cobb's Comedy Club in San Francisco, they do this thing where on the projector, they like show comics' famous quotes. And Chris Rock kind of had a quote where he was like, comedians are like preachers and our audience is our congregation. They're always going to be loyal to the pastor. And it's like, even though Joe Rogan did what he did, even at that moment, when you look at that footage and he goes, "You steal material." And then somebody in the crowd, some girl yells out, "Yeah, but he makes it better." So, even she's excusing what is theft. And when the people love you and they're behind you, you got them.
Yeah.
He's obviously, because I think of some of that, not where he used to be, but also some of that also is from the fact that, how long has it been since Mind and Mencia? I think he might have been in 2 movies. But you never know. That's the beauty of show business. You never know. Something could turn the tide just like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I brought it back. I kind of felt like what Joe Rogan did to him in the way that it was accepted by the public because Joe Rogan became as big as he became, I felt was just sort of unfair.
Well, it was really unfair when he, did that, but then gave a pass to Amy Schumer and called it parallel thinking.
Right.
Come on, man.
In fact, Carlos even mentioned that in the new Joe Rogan Netflix special, there were some jokes that he stole.
The Joe stole?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and they actually showed the comedian and they showed it the side.
Oh, really?
I mean, listen, it's the internet. They're going to dig up what they're going to dig up. So, yeah. So it was kind of,
So nobody's completely
karma and
clean.
a certain... Listen, I remember I interviewed D.L. Hughley not too long ago. And he said that early in his career, he was stealing Robin Harris's jokes.
Yeah.
And Tommy Davidson confronted him about it. And at the time, he was angry, but he said, I was actually doing it, though.
I used to take Robert, when I first started out 30 years ago, it was Robin Harris.
Aha.
Yeah. And I remember Tommy Davidson, we were at this place. It's not even open no more. It was on Encino and Balboa in the Valley. And Tommy Davidson came up to me and goes, I think I've been doing comedy maybe a year. And Tommy Davidson came up to me and he said, "Hey man, that's Robin Harris stuff." And I wanted to fight Tommy, but he was right. And right then and there I learned I'm not doing that no more.
I think part of what hurts you too is if you just brazen about it and arrogant. Like when Carlos was accused of doing it, Carlos would then later on just brazenly just go, "Yeah, I've stolen jokes, so what? I do make it better." That don't help you.
He said that?
Yeah, versus comedians who humbly go, "Yeah, I fucked up." Because I recently did an interview on Barry Katz's podcast, who used to once upon a time manage Dave Chappelle, Frank Caliendo, and Jay Moore, and it almost was gonna be my manager. And I remember early in my career when I started at 14 years old, he asked me, he was like, "Remember that time you were accused of stealing a joke from Dave Chappelle?" And I went, "Yeah, I did."
What joke was it?
I don't remember, but it was, I was young, I was starting out. I kind of probably caught myself at a moment on stage where I was nervous and desperate and didn't think anybody would find out. And yeah, I did it, but it almost feels like to some degree, and I remember Damon Wayans said this, if you ain't stealing from some of the best, then you ain't a comic. You know how many people have stolen from Richard Pryor? So I'm not condoning it, or advocating it, you do it. But sometimes that's the nature of the beast.
I mean, like DL said that he's convinced that every comedian has stolen jokes at some point.
At some point.
At some point.
Yeah.
Now, I brought this up to Dion Cole, and he said he's never stolen a joke. He said, in fact, he doesn't even watch other comedy specials to avoid potentially just doing that accidentally.
Right.
You know, he's always like, look, if you watch my Netflix specials, I don't talk about current events. I really try to go a completely different direction. I don't know if you've seen his latest special where he's talking about older women and stuff like that. Like, he really goes in a different direction than everyone else. But he told me there was a situation that happened in St. Louis where this comic that went on literally took his whole routine. Like he's watching it off stage going like, this is my whole routine. And he said he actually confronted the dude after the show. And he had like a crew of dudes with him. This was in St. Louis. And he was like, yo, man, I'll smack the shit out of you. Like, you know who I am? And blah, blah. The guy, I don't know. And he said, like, it started to escalate. And one of the dudes that were like, you know, in the crowd, in like the huddle that they were having the argument in, pulled out a gun. So everyone ran. He comes to find out that was actually one of his guys, but he was like, man, I'm done with St. Louis. I'm never going back here again.
Right.
These motherfuckers are just too crazy. Like, there's too much going on here.
And Dion's a witty dude, man. Like, just witty.
I love Dion.
Yeah.
I'm one of my favorite people these days.
Yeah.
Honestly, just the coolest dude. I remember speaking to Dion Cole. He talked about how Diddy hired him to write his monologue for the Billboard Awards. Mm-hmm. He said, actually, Dave Chappelle was offered it first, and Dave kind of like, here, you do it. I don't want to do it.
Right.
So he gave it to Dion. Mm. This was the night that Dave got jumped on stage at the Hollywood Bowl and everything else like that. And he was like, look, he was like, when I approached Diddy, I was like, look, I used to write for Conan, and if you want me to write for you, we just need to hang out for a couple of weeks. And I need to just figure out, your sayings and, and how you talk, because that'll make it the most natural for you, as opposed to me just writing a whole bunch of, stuff that you're not familiar with. And look, he said he's never saw anything, inappropriate. He was flying on private jets, smoking weed. He was inspired. And we talked about how, like, Diddy calls you 2 a.m., would you not show up? He was like, I would show up at 2 a.m. I mean, not at his room, but at the studio or, other places. It was like, yo, the guy's a genius. Like, when he feels inspired and he calls you, you go and you show up. He even said how, like, he asked the security, he's like, man, when do y'all sleep? They're like, whenever we can. Because Diddy would just drag these dudes with him everywhere he went. But, people like to phrase it. Me and you, I think, had a discussion about this where I said if Diddy called me up at 2 a.m. and said, hey, Vlad, I got a business idea, come by my hotel room, I would come by. I don't see a problem with it.
And that's where we parted ways. Meet me in the studio, nigga. Meet me at Denny's. Why am I in your hotel room?
It's not going to be a regular hotel room. It's not going to be like a little...
I don't give a fuck if it was a castle, nigga. Why am I in your room?